Rocky, as many of you know, has had a lasting legacy in many of our lives. XL Ministries is really the brainchild of Rocky Wyatt many, many years ago. And Rocky has lived out what we preach. Rocky has invested his life into faithful men who are entrusting to faithful men. And myself and many of the board members are products of Rocky's ministry and investment in our lives. I didn't know the Lord when I met Rocky 45 years ago. He had to lead me to the Lord. He discipled me. He got me my first job in ministry 38 years ago. He baptized me. He led me to the Lord. He did my wedding. He's there for the birth of my children. Not personally, but right there. And I said, he just needs to stick around long enough to bury me, and then we're full circle. So appreciate Rocky and love him and thankful for him. And I know that you will be blessed by his ministry here in the next few minutes. Rocky, come and teach.
Thank you. Hello, it's good to see all of you. Glad to be able to be here. And for those that don't know me well, just so you see me here dressed nice. If you come to my home in southern Colorado in the mountains, you'll see me with a chainsaw and a splitter. So, you know, it's hard to see the whole person. I just want you to know, I'm kind of a normal guy, live in the mountains. Harold, raise your hand. He's one of the elders in the church we attend. And so I actually served here in this church when this was the only building. Wow. And it changed. And, I'm so grateful for what the Lord has done here. I had the privilege to work with Pastor Tom for 16 or 17 years on staff. I was here at Countryside a number of years before he came. But when he came, I'd served in several churches prior to coming here. And when he came, the leadership was established here at the church. It was actually the first time that I'd ever seen biblical eldership function. First time. I'd served in a number of churches, but never had seen that. Never had seen training men and thinking biblically about the process. And the beauty of Pastor Tom is he values having the plurality of elders. He wants the wisdom of the elders. He wants to be the sole guy running the ship, right? I mean, that's a bad idea, but he truly values it. So I'm very grateful. Grateful for his kindness, grateful for the elders. If you're an elder at Countryside Bible Church, stand up for us, would you? Just so that people can see who you are. I know there's just a few here, but so here's some of the elders at Countryside Bible Church. And so we talk about eldership, and you're welcome to talk to any of the XL guys, but these guys are living it here in this church, so feel free to talk to any of those. Thanks, guys. And I do thank the elders for, they're so kind to provide the facilities and so much at no cost to us so that we can offer everything at no cost to you. So we're grateful. Also, I want to welcome our audience that is online. So this is being live streamed today through our own website. Also, it's being live streamed through AGTV and Exposit the Word. So we welcome you and glad that you can join us. I'm going to talk about XL Ministries generally for a bit because this ministry is new to some folks and help you understand what our heart and desire is in this ministry. And then I'm actually going to talk through some of our materials. But take heart, if you're new to us, we're not selling you anything, all right? I'm not marketing. And so if you're here, we have materials over on the table, and those are available for free to churches and church leaders. We want to benefit and bless the church, and we want to see the church have the resources that they need to train godly leaders in the context of the church. And so we make those available. If you're online, watching us in live stream, you can go to our website at xlministries.org. It's just the letter X, the letter L, ministries.org. And our materials are available for download, free, and also in hard copy. But what I would ask is, don't just fill your bookshelf to fill your bookshelf. Okay? You can download all of our materials in PDFs. The manuals are actually fillable manuals, discipleship manuals. And so if you're not sure about them, download them, look at them, make sure it's something that you're going to use, and that if you're going to use them, order what you need. We want you to order what you need. We just, as a ministry, when you give things away, obviously somebody's paying. And we just want to use the resources well. But our heartbeat is this. In Ephesians 4, it says we're supposed to equip the saints for the work of service, right? Is it odd to you that when I talk about the church today, I'm not talking liberal church, okay? I'm always going to be talking the evangelical church. Is it odd to you that most evangelical churches in America today, and I think around the world, actually have no process to train men to become elders, to train men to become vocational elders or pastors, or to train men or women to be missionaries? I mean, train them, okay? Equip them. When you heard what Pastor Tom was talking about, I suspect there's some elders going, oh, holy tamales. Yeah. It's a huge role. I mean, I'm often reminded of Hebrews 13:17. Obey your leaders, for they keep watch over your souls as those who will give an account. Because that's huge. And so much of eldership has just become kind of a support for the pastor, resource people, business. But you guys, elders have to be theologically developed. Churches will pray, God, raise up elders. It's like, how? Like mystically? Boom. Well, okay, send them from some other church. No, you guys. We train men to be elders. They don't just, a man could be gifted to teach, able to teach, but if you don't invest in them to instruct them in biblical knowledge and theology, how in the world could they ever fulfill the role? I think there's tons of guys who are serving as elders who are godly men, love the Lord, want to do things right, but have no idea of the training that they need. And even today, you think about, try to find a church where you can go where the church says, you know what? We will disciple you to be a pastor. I'm not a non-seminary guy, okay? I'm not anti-seminary. I'm anti the church not taking the primary role of training a man to become a pastor. You can't disciple a man to be a pastor in an institution. You can benefit from an institution, but you can't pass the buck. And then think about this. How great a privilege it is for a church and church leadership to see somebody come up through the church that demonstrates a giftedness for ministry. The church invests. The church trains them theologically, practically, using whatever resources are most helpful for that guy. So that church watches that man going from believing they're called to an affirmation to standing in front of the church and preaching the word of God. Is there anything better than that? But today what we do, we typically send our guy off, and then 3 years later we're looking for a guy that we need because we need a staff guy. So we try to find somebody else that somebody else sent away. Hope they like where we live, like our church, work with our staff and all this. What are we doing? What are we doing? You guys, so our passion is this. Our passion is to encourage churches and church leaders with both the responsibility and the privilege to do significant training in the context of the church. That's our passion. So when I left Countryside, it was my father-in-law's like, is this what you call retirement? This is the retirement I like. It's busy, kind of wild, exciting, but we would like, as XL Ministries, to influence as many church leaders and pastors, not only in the States, but internationally, to regain their vision, the responsibility and privilege to train. But not only that, we want to help. We want to help by providing resources and counsel, things that would really be of benefit. Now, you're here at Countryside Bible Church, and I mean, there's churches that make this church look small around here, okay? But where I come from, this is a big church, right? Some of you come from small churches, and you go, yeah, but look at this place, you know? Well, you guys, the church I go to is in Cotopaxi, Colorado. It's a mountain church, maybe 70 people. Depends if it's summer or winter, okay? And the resources that we put together are intended to be used at a church like Countryside or at a church like Cotopaxi. Because this is not an issue of big church, small church. This is an issue of church ministry and the privilege we have to serve the Lord. So I want to talk about our resources just to help you to understand what we were thinking when we put them together. And if I was using them, and I do use them in a church setting, how I would use them so that maybe that helps you in the process. And then as we progress, I want to get to the elder self-evaluation, which is kind of the thing that I'm going to end and speak about why I think that's such an important document. But I do want to say, you know, that message Tom gave, wasn't that great? Able to teach? And you guys, let me just say, if the only place you want to teach is a one-on-one and you really don't want to be ever in front of people, it's probably a bad idea to be an elder. I'm just saying. Because you better be able to stand up in front of everybody at a moment's notice and defend the scripture for the glory of God. And if that's something you just like, oh, you know, that's just not me, that's a problem. Don't you think? I don't mean you got to teach every week and all that. I'm just saying, guys, when we get down to the end of time, and I'll talk about it at the end, what's this culture going to be like? It's going downhill, and it's going to take courageous, bold men who will stand up for the truth, okay? I believe that with all my heart. And to have somebody that's kind of reserved in that respect, again, I'm not saying they got to teach a big class, all that. I'm just saying you have to have the capacity to do that and do it well, because the days are coming. So on Tom's message, for those of you that you got most of the notes, but not all of them, we did a checklist for you, okay? And this has, able to teach does not mean, has what it means, and the scriptures and things, they're gonna be, I don't know if they're up right now, but they'll be over there where you can pick this up. And then if you're online, this document is online. Under our documents, you can download this. I did add one thing at the end of it. It said a reminder to church leadership concerning training. Oftentimes men cannot meet the qualification of able to teach because the church has not been faithful in training men in theology. While being able to teach is a gift from God, it can only be used well when a person learns theology, proper hermeneutics, and homiletics, and they need to learn that in the church. You might be shocked how many potential guys you have in the church when you begin to really invest and train the guys in the church. Just might be shocked. And I'll be honest, I'm glad there's a lot of guys that say no, because if the church hasn't equipped them, they're going to put them in a position that they just ought not to be in. And I do think it's important to remember that when we talk elder qualifications, on occasion, I've talked to somebody about, hey, would you consider being an elder? And they'll look at the qualifications and go, oh my. You understand that those qualifications, for the most part, are Christian qualifications. You understand that? For the most part, those are just simply, you can find other verses that tell every Christian you need to be able to do those things or live that way. And so the reason the elders need to meet those qualifications, why? So the church can follow their example. It's not so you got super saints and then you're fine, just moderation. It's the elders are living in such a way that those that they're shepherding can go in their homes, go to their businesses, get to know them, be there, and see exactly what it means to live out the Christian life so that they can follow them. So just keep those things in mind. And so here we go. One of the things that we encourage churches to do is to train people for ministry in the context of a church. And I'm not saying, again, a lot of times you can do that with seminary or without seminary. There's not a one-track way. But they have to be theologically developed. They have to be practically trained. Both are essential. And so when we help churches to establish internships, we'll help provide a structure for pastoral internships or missions internships, and there's a couple of booklets over there on that. And if they're not in seminary, part of the training is going to include books to read, papers to write, those kind of things, plus Bible knowledge, plus systematic theology. And then there's also a whole array of things that they have to accomplish over the course of an internship. So in the church, it'd be great for them to see how they teach a membership class. But if you have a membership class, then let them teach it. It'd be great for them to learn how you teach a baptism class. But once they see that, let them teach it. We want them to be exposed to ministry. Pastor, are you going out on a crisis call? Call them. You need to get over here right now. Well, I can't. I got crisis. Don't wait. Hurry. Take them. We want them to be a part of the life of the ministry of the church. That's what it means to be discipled for ministry. When you look at the Great Commission lived out through the book of Acts, guys, and the church is growing by thousands, were there also biblical leaders developed? Yeah. Appoint elders in every church. How did that happen? Well, the leaders of the church, in that process of discipling, they're teaching them all that God had commanded, which is equipping the saints for the work of service. So if I could use the term, leadership organically was developed as they were just accomplishing the work of the Great Commission, because some were gifted to be pastors, teachers. Some were gifted to serve. But the leaders were always, you see Paul and those guys, they're always walking with somebody with them. They're always training. And so the internship is designed, says, so as a pastor, as elders in the church, you're investing well. And you know, for most guys who just come out of academics, they typically have only been evaluated teaching in the context of a seminary classroom. They've never been evaluated in the context of a real live church classroom. Think that might be helpful? So when a guy goes to the internship, we provide structure for evaluation so that those guys are evaluated every time they teach. So they learn, where are they strong, where are they weak, how can they improve? We want them to excel in leadership. If they're going to run an event, a men's breakfast or something like, we want them evaluated. And are they doing well administratively? Kind of important in the church, isn't it? We can kind of burn people if we're not careful. Do they do good organizationally with finance, with shepherding, with teach, all of those things? Once a quarter, they would get an evaluation that deals with their personal life, their family life, as well as their ministry life. Those things are all built into the internship so that when a person finishes their internship, they have specific things they're accomplishing. They're going to memorize in an internship. There's an ordination booklet over there. And it has all the Bible knowledge and about 70 systematic theology questions. They have to memorize all of that Bible knowledge, and then they have to write answers to the systematic theology questions each month. But then over the course of the 2 to 3 year internship, they're going to have a mentor that's going to practice with them, practice with them, practice with them. Don't answer this question, okay? Don't answer this question. If you went to seminary and you finished and you had an ordination service after that where you had to have an ordination exam, did you have to cram or not? Don't answer. Because a lot of guys, when they finished, they couldn't pass an ordination. I'm not saying it's not because of their academics. A lot of them got great academics, but how do you retain all of that when it's coming so fast like that? So in the internship, we require them to review that Bible knowledge regularly. And we want them to answer those systematic theology questions out loud to somebody so many times so that by the time they do their ordination, it's like quoting John 3:16. Because you guys, what is the advantage if you have to cram to pass an exam to go into ministry and you don't retain the information? And Tom spoke to that, right? I mean, somebody comes up to you guys. I tell people all the time, when I teach, I know the passage I'm going to teach and when I'm going to teach it and how much time I have. When somebody comes in and plops into my office and sits down and pours their heart out, I better be able to get to the text. Last thing I want to say is, well, I think. That would be awful. And so the internship, all of those things are built in. If a guy's doing seminary simultaneously, then typically our internships are 30 to 36 months. We do that because we kind of match it more to their schedule of seminary, and we don't have them read a bunch of books and write a bunch of reports. They're already doing that, but they have to do the same with the Bible knowledge, systematic theology, and then they also have to do all the responsibilities in the context of the church. I just want you to understand kind of the idea and how we do that. Now, let me say that all of the internship, everything we do is under the authority of the local church leadership. We're XL, I would describe us as a service organization, trying to help you, service ministry, trying to provide structure, help to provide some oversight and things that would help the intern. Or let's say you're a solo pastor and you're training somebody and you had a really rough time in the road in your church. And it's like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up with this guy for a couple months, meeting with him and reviewing stuff and seeing his assignments. And so if you called XL, then we'd say, we got you. We'll assign somebody to that intern. They will work with them through Zoom. And when you can re-engage, then they will just give you an update where he's at, current, and so you can just go from there. Because internships, I would say, typically fail because of the pastor. Not because he's a bad guy. Not at all. But ministry can be tough. And sometimes you get behind and it's rough, and then it's so difficult to get caught up. So XL helps in that process and just provides support, but everything is under the authority of the elders of the local church. I mean, our goal, our desire is that there would be churches all over the place that are investing in men at that level and training men who are both theologically trained and practically trained in the context of the church. You know, another area that we train in is missions. And we'll be doing more and more of that. If you're going to be at the TMAI symposium here in 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be there with our resources because we've talked to the folks there and they would like to do some more partnering. And part of that is because there's such a need in the world of missions to train. You know, we've kind of grown through this time where you want to go to the mission field? Yes! You know the gospel? Yeah. Let's go! You guys, the Great Commission says that we go making disciples, teaching them all that God commanded. Pastor Tom Pennington has written a chapter that's going to be in a TMAI book, comes out, it should be March of 24. And his is on missionaries who are church planters must be elder qualified and trained to equip other elders, other people to become elders. I mean, doesn't that make sense? But you guys, most folks that go to the mission field, they don't receive any substantial theological training. If they do, it's not in the context of the church, most normally. And so we have a structured internship where they need to learn the same theology, but on the practice side, we do a lot of variety of things that are related to missions. And then, Lord willing, we'll also be at the Radius Conference in June. If you're going to be there, that'll be out in Southern California, because the need there is immense as well. So that gives you a bit of a picture of our internship program. And if you wanted to talk about it at some point, there's a contact form on our website. If you just fill that out and say, hey, we'd love to talk to somebody, we will gladly talk to you, or let us know here, whatever. That's our heartbeat. That's what we desire to do in our ministry. Now, when it comes to eldership, which has been the topic, of course, today, we did 2 manuals, 2 discipleship manuals. One's called Becoming a Biblical Leader. One's called Becoming a Biblical Elder. And we did 2 of them because it was my feeling, if it was me, to start a guy in becoming a biblical elder could get you in trouble if you get about 3 lessons in and think, this was a bad idea. You know how it is, right? Easier to hire than it is to fire. Easier to pull them in and get them out. And I think that's maybe why they have rotating elder boards, which is a topic for another section. But it does give you a way to get rid of them. And so we did 2 manuals. One's becoming a biblical leader, and I want to just walk you through some of the difference. Our manuals are designed to be, you meet once a month. You can always do a little bit more, but it's a lot. And once a month seemed like a reasonable thing for a person to take some folks through a study. So on becoming a biblical leader, it's intended to be a 10-month program, meeting once a month. It can be done one-on-one or small groups. It provides a biblical understanding of the church and church leadership. So it deals with a lot of God's perspective, Christ's perspective of the church. It provides biblical knowledge, like themes of books, outlines, some key chapters. When we do the Bible knowledge, guys, it's really up to the church leaders how much you want your folks to memorize. Okay, we don't dictate that, because here's the truth. Some of you struggle with memory. As we get older, sometimes it gets harder. You know, my son pastors in northern Colorado. Has an elder that's like 90. And he's a neat man, godly man. Am I going to require him to do, but it's like, it just ruin him. So you have to determine as a church what you're going to have them memorize by way of the biblical knowledge. But in this one, we build in themes, outline, key chapters. We also address some systematic theology questions, like one per chapter, so not a ton. But when we do that, our manuals are self-contained. So when they ask a systematic theology question, it gives key verses, and then we provide a theological quote to help them answer it, so that they don't have to go out and buy things online, right? Figure out the answers. So we build that in so it's self-contained, so it's more manageable and controlled. And then we also, in the becoming a biblical leader, we want them to interact with their own church doctrinal statement. So when we're dealing with the doctrine of God, it'll say, go to your church's doctrinal statement, read what it says about the doctrine of God, and then answer some questions about it. Why are these things important? If you didn't have them, what would be the risk? Those kind of things. We don't interact with those. And then it reviews the biblical qualifications for elders, reminding the participants, for the most part, those are requirements for all Christians. Okay, because I think we've gotten that very, very confused. So it goes through those qualifications, but it shows other verses that demonstrate where those need to be lived out in every Christian's life. And then it addresses a number of spiritual disciplines. And so that's the biblical leader. You can train people to be deacons, to help them be better parents, help them just serve better in the church, youth workers, whatever it might be. It's just a general tool to train people both practically and theologically. And it's also a tool that might help you identify somebody you say, that guy could be an elder. I mean, as we've walked through this and we've talked about these as things, characteristics, qualifications, they relate to the average Christian, this guy's serious about his theology. He's learning this stuff. And so it's a way that you might discern, to some extent, if there's some guys in your church that have that level of seriousness that would be needed for a man to become an elder. Just a note, that BBL, becoming a biblical leader, can be used by men and women, but we're about to come out with a version of becoming a biblical leader for women, so that it addresses some of the qualifications, but addresses a number of the qualifications that actually relate specifically to women. And how? Because we also need theologically astute women, right, to be able to teach our women and help maintain that spiritual maturity in the church. So we want to help train godly women for the appropriate roles that they can have in the church. Well, when it comes to eldership, then we have becoming a biblical elder. And in the biblical elder, it steps up quite a bit, and it has a different focus. Now, you understand from what Tom said, before you take somebody into becoming a biblical elder, make sure you have reasonable confidence they can teach, right? That means you need to have watched them, seen them, heard them. And here, when they start talking about a guy, they'll say, hey, let's all listen to a recording of his message. We can pick random ones, wherever the guy's been teaching here at Countryside, let's listen to him, right? Because that's an important aspect. So you want that to be reasonably settled before you bring a guy in and start becoming a biblical elder. Because obviously, if you get to the end of it and that's a problem, then it's a stop. You can't do it. So you want to make sure of that. But then that becoming a biblical elder is intended to be 12 months. All right? Again, you can go faster or slower, whatever you want. But if you go too fast, it's too much information. It's best used in a one-on-one format. Because the idea is you want to know this man well. Now, I talked to somebody, and I can't for the moment think who, but they're doing some training with some guys, and one elder is taking the guy through for, the first 3 or 4 chapters, another elder's going through the next 3 or 4, and they're doing it that way, so the elders all get involved in that process. The bottom line is, it's not intended to be for a group, because people can hide. It can be hard to know and discern when you're doing it in a group, and this is way too serious. When it comes to the biblical knowledge and theology, there's going to be more of both in the biblical elder. There's going to be themes, outlines, key chapters, key verses, key dates, key people. Okay, so there's going to be more. Now, when you get to the internship, which is the ordination booklet over there, it's going to go beyond this. Okay, but we don't give them the answers in that one. We do have an answer guide for the ordination booklet, but we only give it to the pastors or elders who are doing training. I tell guys, all of our stuff you can get online, but you can't get the answer guide. You won't see it on there. Everything's free except that one. It's $500. Now, we provide that to the guys that are doing the training, just so that it's a help to them when they're listening to somebody and say, here's another key verse that would be good, or that kind of a thing. But there's in the elder one, there's more of the Bible knowledge, more of the systematic theology. And on the systematic theology, it's not going to be one quote. It's going to be several quotes from theologians and key verses so that they can grapple more deeply with the theological issues related to our theology. And then the elder one also goes through a whole list of issues that relate to eldership. Like, why do you need a plurality of qualified elders? I mean, you understand that at some level, the idea of having a plurality of elders is for the sake of disagreement. Because if you never disagreed, why do you need a plurality of elders? Right? But some people are so troubled by the fact that there could be disagreement that it just ruins. No. That's what the pastor wants to do. Let's go. That's not plurality. Plurality is God brings men together, sinful men who desire to honor the Lord, to work through sometimes extraordinarily complex issues, knowing that they're going to work on them until they can listen and learn and grow and come to a good conclusion. I was shocked here one time when we were dealing with a difficult issue on the elders. This is early when Tom came. It was a difficult issue, and it wasn't a theological issue. It had more to do with some circumstantial things that had to be addressed that were very complex. And guys, in every church that I've served in where I disagreed with the pastor, you know what happened to me? They accepted my resignation. I haven't even written it yet. And so we'd gone through a pretty tough time here. And we're having that elder meeting. And Tom and I had talked prior about it. And we didn't see things exactly the same on it. And we got in that meeting and everybody's kind of sharing. And you know how you normally, let's take a vote. Tom's like, we don't take a vote on things like this. Every man speak their position. I'm like, here I go again. And we got done with that meeting. I felt awful because that's never worked good for me. And I left that meeting thinking, well, been a long haul, and I don't think it's going to end well. The next morning, I came into the office. Tom was in his office. His door was open. And he says, hey, Rock, wasn't that a great elder meeting? I'm like, not exactly my sentiments. Like, what do you mean? So I went into his office. I said, what I mean is my history in churches, if you disagree, even in person, let alone in front of a board, you can start looking for another place to serve. He's like, you must be kidding me. I said, no, I'm not kidding you. He says, Rock, I wouldn't have you on this elder board if I didn't want your wisdom. And I would never want you to withhold that. Never. And this is good. He said, I wouldn't want you to walk in and surprise me with something that we hadn't talked about. But we talked about it. I knew where you were. I'm like, I think I'm going to like this job. Because sadly, not very many pastors are like that. They're not. Because a plurality is to serve well together. It's to disagree so that you can come to a good place. It's not so one man can control the board. I mean, one man's willing to concede as they work through and pray through and struggle through because they want the unity of the board, but they want to benefit from the wisdom of everybody. Communication. It addresses those things. It addresses, if a guy's moving towards eldership, we encourage them to sit in on some elder meetings, at least appropriate parts of them, so that they can get an understanding of what that's like. We want them to participate in elder-type activities, providing ministry oversight, teaching God's word, praying for the church, visiting the sick, church discipline. We want them to learn how to practice those things, and that's built into that elder training manual, becoming a biblical elder. It goes through the biblical qualifications, only this time it's saying, consider your life. Because if you assume this role, those that we have the privilege to shepherd in this church need to be able to follow your example, your disciplines, your priorities, your convictions, your commitments. It's a big deal. When it comes to systematic theology on the able to teach, you guys, I think it's appropriate to put a guy through a test at some point to find out what they know. Because I think, I can't prove this absolutely, but I'm fairly certain of it, that most elders in the church in America could not defend their own doctrinal statement if their life depended on it. I'm not saying they can't affirm it. I'm not saying they're not godly men. I'm saying that if a congregant walked up to them and said, I don't understand why we believe the Trinity, I suspect that not very many men who serve in that capacity as an elder could say, let me walk you through a series of scriptures that will help you to understand why this is so important. You guys, here's the deal. How does a church grow beyond the spiritual maturity of its leadership? How could that happen? And I don't blame the guy. The church has to train him. The church has to train him, pour into him. And you guys, the truth is, that's work. And the truth is that there's some guys, when they realize how important that is, they're going to say, I'm out. That's okay. That's okay. When you think about the progression of this, you guys, if the only guy that really has to be theologically astute is the pastor, and then he leaves, who's going to make the decision on the next pastor? You wonder why the church is in decline? It's not hard to figure out. I believe the training of leaders in the church, elders, pastors, missionaries, is one of the greatest needs in the evangelical church today. I believe that. There's a couple of new resources that we just came out with. One of them is called Considering Eldership. So, that whole mindset, somebody comes up and says, what's it take to be an elder in this church? This is just a tool to help with that. Because this takes them not only through qualifications, but it takes them through roles, responsibilities, the seriousness of the task. It's a Q&A. You can get it in soft copy, hard copy. And the things that we write are things that I think of, man, this would have been real helpful for me. As I was doing leadership development, things like that in the church here. Now, I serve in the church where I'm at, but I travel a lot, so I'm not an elder in the church, but I work with our elders and have the privilege to be a part in that way. So I use these resources even where I'm at. But this is just to help to sort it out. This is something you can do before you do the becoming a biblical elder, because this will clear some guys out that are like, oh. Okay, I didn't know. And even when we were talking, Francisco, that when the church understands the process that a guy goes through and what they're required to learn and know and why it's so important, what a testimony that is to the church, that this is a serious, serious role. Now, let me say a couple things about, I've got a couple brochures and I'm going to talk. I've got a few minutes to talk about elder self-evaluation. Won't take me long, though. We have a couple of brochures. This brochure is a trifold, and it's about our ministry, and it's about some of the resources and things like that. Feel free to take this, or if you know people that could use some help, feel free to pass it on. We'd be glad to help them. It also does mention the fact that if you want to financially support XL, you can. And you guys, we're not going to bug you. We don't do that. Okay, when we say it's free, you take it. Okay, we just ask you, please use it unto the Lord. But there are always those that are interested in other ways, because what we're doing is because we love the church. And people who love the church have been very kind to help us accomplish this ministry. And we couldn't do it without their help. And then we have just a one-page brochure that just talks about a lot of our resources. So if that's helpful for you to understand what they're about, then feel free to take those as well. So elder self-evaluation. It's interesting that not in all churches, because some churches, it's a nominate, vote, and the person's an elder. But churches that have a process, normally a guy will do a pretty serious evaluation before becoming an elder, and then becomes an elder. And you know that the reason they're supposed to have those qualifications to become an elder is so they live out those qualifications as an elder. All right? And so the elder self-evaluation is intended to help elders occasionally reflect on their life and where they're at as it relates to eldership. Now, you guys, any of you guys struggle with sin? I know some of you. And you know me. We all do. You guys, we all do. I've always believed I'm one decision away from disaster. One decision. Right? And you guys, even if you've served on an elder board for a long, long time, sometimes you bring that younger guy on. And you guys, you got to be training generationally. Otherwise, your elders just get old and you all die, and so does the church. And you say, yeah, but it changes things. Yeah, that's right. Get used to it. That's part of training. That's what you do. And it's an important part of what you do, but this is to help elders who have continued to serve. Because, sometimes you bring that new guy on and you're sitting there and they start asking questions, saying things, and you're going, we've dealt with this 16 times over the last 12 years. They have no idea. It's easy to kind of get jaded, a little impatient. I know, because I've been there. And so this is a tool. Well, you'll like this. So on occasion, I'll get a call from an elder in a church or an email or something. How do you guys evaluate your pastor? I usually go to the website, see how long that pastor's been there before they ask the question. The same way you evaluate the rest of your elders. Right? It's not what, that reveals we're the boss of you evaluate them the same way you evaluate yourself, all of the elders. And so this is a tool, because as a pastor, if you try to write this and give this to your elders, somebody just might think you're aiming at them. So now you can say, man, I got this thing from XL. Elder self-evaluation. Maybe once a year, every couple of years, we hand it out, and all the elders take it home, fill it out. It deals not only with qualifications, but it goes beyond that in dealing with the role. So it's one thing to just go through, Titus 1, 1 Timothy 3. It's another one to start thinking about the stewardship of the church. How am I doing with evangelism? Who am I discipling? Where am I really serving people in the life of the church? Shepherding? I've never believed that successful ministry is based on whether the seats in the auditorium are full. It's what are you doing with the people in the seats in the auditorium? Jesus said, I know my sheep, and they know me, right? So shepherding is knowing the sheep. It is not a once-a-month meeting or a twice-a-month meeting. I mean, that's just like a fraction of what biblical eldership is. Or equipping the saints for the work of service. That is a role of the leaders of the church, the elders of the church. How are we doing that? How am I doing that? What does that look like? And I think with that, of course, is, are we training other men to become elders? Are we training men who God is calling to ministry? Are we training women in appropriate ways for ministry? Equipping the saints, feeding the flock. And you guys, we may not all teach in the same way or the same amount, but an elder's got to have such a passion for the word, right? That he has to want to communicate it. He just has to want to communicate it. There are important principles for elders. Confidentiality. I'll tell you what, some of the worst church situations are when an elder doesn't get his way and he starts talking to people in the church. Really? I mean, that is disqualifying. That is disqualifying. Eldership is not an easy thing. Sometimes it doesn't always go the way I think it should go. But I'm more interested in God's glory than my way. It's got to be that way. Biblical humility is elders. Willing to listen and learn, encourage. Biblical principles versus preferences. You ever see that become an issue in the church? Where somebody's preferences, they elevated them as though they were biblical principles. You guys, you can die for biblical principles, but don't die for your preferences. We've seen a lot of that in the last couple of years. We've seen churches split over that. Over things that are not theological, but personal preferences. But we're all tired of hearing it, so I'm not going to say what it is. You guys, as elders, the task that God has graciously entrusted you with is a huge task. But it's a blessed task. It's a privileged opportunity. But I'm telling you, the enemy is going to do whatever he can to undermine you. And it's one thing, I think that in the church, as a general rule, it will always be an effort and struggle to move towards biblical unity. Because in the general church, I mean, some are walking with the Lord, some know the Lord and are struggling in their walk, and some are coming and think they're believers and they're not, and some they're coming or just not believers. So you're always working towards unity. But in your eldership, you need to have biblical unity. That's essential. In fact, if you read the high priestly prayer of our Lord, he says that, right? Unity is the testimony of the church that there is a living God. And as elders, that ought to be a huge, huge issue. And you ought to value that, work towards that. And if you're a guy that's just, you're just kind of that difficult guy that's always pushing, check your heart. Check your heart. Is what you're doing really about God's glory or about your preference? Because it's such a big deal. It's the church. Christ died for the church. He bought the church. We're his. I just want to read a couple of scriptures by way of reminder. They're from Paul. One's in 1 Timothy, one is in 2. It says in 1 Timothy 4, but the Spirit explicitly says that in later times some will fall away from the faith, paying attention to deceitful spirits and doctrines of demons by means of the hypocrisy of liars, seared in their own conscience as with a branding iron. Men who forbid marriage, advocate abstaining from foods which God has created to be gratefully shared in by those who believe and know the truth. The battles will be unending. Paul talked about it in 2 Timothy before he dies. He says this, but realize this, chapter 3, that in the last days difficult times will come, for men will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant. Now listen to this list. Revilers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, irreconcilable, malicious gossips, without self-control, brutal, haters of good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. holding to a form of godliness. That's shocking. These people are living in a totally godless manner, and yet they hold to a form of godliness. They think they're fine with God. They think it's good. Because the church is moving that direction. And the protection for the church is the biblical leadership that God instructs us to have, not with one man, but with a plurality, so that we can safeguard the church. In his eldership work, you bet it is. It's hard work, but it's good work. And so our hope, please know, is that we can benefit you, help you. It's not that we have it all figured out. I assure you of that. But if we can help you with tools that will benefit your ministry, we would be delighted to do that. Let me pray. Lord, thanks for your word. You're such a patient God, because, Lord, I know every one of us in this room sits here knowing that we are so totally inadequate. I mean, it's a remarkable thing that we can even be called your children. And what a price you had to pay so that that would be possible. We're grateful for the privilege of knowing you. And then, God, the fact that you give us your word and your Holy Spirit, and you would give us gifts so that we could actually serve you, knowing that that ability all comes from you. You allow us to bear much fruit because you work in our lives and you work through our lives. You're so patient with the struggles and the sins that we deal with and struggle with. And Lord, I do believe that church leadership is such a massive issue today. And I don't think it's been intentional. I just think it's been gradual. And so many churches now have just moved away from serious training. And I pray, God, you'd change that. And Lord, I pray that men would be raised up that want to serve you well, that can be trained in the church, that can be equipped for ministry, that can go to the mission field, who are theologically sound, that are well discipled by faithful men and women in the church. Lord, we know that that would have a profound impact on the church. And so we pray these things for your glory. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.